My name is Katherine Reynolds. I'm 34, and I built a tech company worth $50 million from nothing but a stubborn idea and relentless grind. I poured everything I had into it: late nights, missed holidays, years of proving myself in a world that rarely believed in me. So, imagine sitting at a celebratory dinner and hearing your father raise his glass with a proud smile, and then announce your brother Jason as the new CEO of Secure Sync. Jason, my own brother, a guy who had contributed exactly zero to the company. Now, he was being handed my life's work gift wrapped with our father's blessing. The room didn't just spin, it shattered. I sat there, stunned, realizing I'd been stabbed not just in the back, but straight through the chest by the people who were supposed to love and support me. But here's what they never saw coming. I didn't throw a fit. I didn't beg or scream. I walked away. With every single patent, with every key executive, with every client relationship they had taken for granted. If you think that was the end of the story, buckle up. This was just the opening act. Before I take you into how I flipped this betrayal into a legacy 10 times stronger, do me a favor, drop a comment with where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe. This is the story of how revenge is best served with legal precision and grace. Let's rewind for a moment. I grew up in Bellevue, one of Seattle's most polished neighborhoods. My dad, William Reynolds, was the king of commercial real estate. Ruthless, driven, and firmly convinced that only men belonged at the top. My mom, Margaret, was once a rising star in accounting until she traded her ambition for pearls and dinner parties. And Jason, my younger brother by 2 years, was the golden child. Jason could sneeze near a baseball and get a standing ovation. I could win a statewide coding competition and get a polite, "That's nice." Katherine, did you see Jason's new project? At 16, I built my first computer from salvaged parts. My dad barely glanced at it. "Interesting hobby," he muttered, before turning dinner conversation toward Jason's junior varsity football spot despite his lack of talent. "He's got leadership," Dad would say. "Natural charisma. That's what you can't teach." By 17, I was coding programs and maintaining a flawless GPA. My guidance counselor saw something in me and pushed hard for MIT. Too expensive. My father said, "A state school is fine for someone like you." Meanwhile, Jason with a C average got private tutors and somehow, magically, a ticket to Boston College. "Your brother needs the connections," my mom said gently. "You'll be fine anywhere with your technical brain." But at MIT, something clicked. I finally found people who valued innovation over gender. My roommate, Allison, was the first person who truly saw me. We'd stay up late bouncing ideas, talking about how broken most systems were and how we could make them better. "You don't just see how things work," she said during finals week sophomore year. "You see how they should work." I graduated summa cum laude with dual degrees in computer science and business. Jason scraped by after 6 years and 2 academic probations, emerging with a general business degree. At my graduation dinner, Dad raised his glass. To Katherine, always the studious one. Then, turning to Jason with glowing pride, and to Jason's new VP role at Wilmot Construction. "Now that's impressive." Of course, the position was a product of Dad's golf club connections, and it came with a cushy salary that dwarfed my entry-level consulting gig. For 3 years, I busted my ass at Prism Technologies. I climbed fast, not by politicking, but by building solutions that saved clients millions. Meanwhile, Jason drifted sideways through Wilmot. Each role explained away as broadening his base. Then came the spark. While leading a data security overhaul for a bank, I found a massive vulnerability in how platforms transferred data. The current tools were bloated and sluggish, leaving holes wide open. So I did what I always do. I stayed late. I built something better, sleeker, smarter. My manager was impressed but waved me off. Corporate wants to stick with the vendors they know. That night, I called Allison. She was now at a VC firm in San Francisco. I've built a real solution, I told her, pacing my apartment, but no one's listening. Then maybe, she said, you're talking to the wrong people. What if you built the company? When I brought the idea up at home, Dad scoffed. Security tech isn't a coffee shop. Katherine, you're going up against giants. Prism's giving you a stable salary. Don't be foolish. I'm not building a coffee shop. I shot back. I found a real market gap. And a real solution. His answer, a sigh of disappointment. That's your generation's problem. Everyone thinks they're exceptional. Jason understands the value of working up the ladder. Jason nodded. Smug as ever. You gotta pay your dues. Sis. 2 weeks later, I quit Prism. It was terrifying. My savings barely covered 6 months of lean living. I converted my second bedroom into an office and mapped out the security platform on a giant whiteboard wall. I called it Secure Sync, a system that could synchronize security protocols across scattered platforms, with no lag or performance drag. My first investor pitched Brunswick Capital. The managing partner barely glanced at the demo. Interesting concept, but no business experience. Security is crowded. 5 more pitches. Same rejection. Same patronizing smiles. Desperate, I turned to Dad. We met at his favorite steakhouse. I brought charts, projections, a bulletproof business plan. It's solid, he admitted. My heart jumped. But I don't do startups. He added, too risky. Why not sell this to Prism? Take a bonus. Play it safe. Because then it's their property, not mine, I said. He signaled for the check. Just don't come asking for a job when it crashes. But then came Linda Harris. At a Women in Tech networking event, I pitched Linda, a retired exec fresh off an acquisition. She didn't blink at my gender or age. She asked real questions. She tested the prototype. Twice. You solved the latency issue that's plagued this space for years, she said. How much do you need to build an MVP and land your first client? Her investment, $300,000. Her mentorship, priceless. She believed in me, and that changed everything. I brought in Marcus Wells, a genius I'd worked with at Prism. Over coffee. He hesitated. You want me to leave a stable job to join a company with no clients and 1 round of funding? Yes. But also to become CTO and a co-owner of a future industry leader. He looked at me for a long moment. Send me the specs. By the next morning, he was in. We worked out of my apartment. Marcus coded from the couch. I lived on ramen and 3 a.m. coffee. Every dollar went to development and patent filings. 3 months later, we landed a pilot with a small credit union. Their system was outdated, and the big vendors were quoting 6-month timelines. I can get you compliant in 3 weeks, I said, knowing we'd have to live there to make it happen. And we did. When their audit passed with flying colors, we didn't just celebrate, we exploded. That single success led to more clients, more use cases, more patents. Secure Sync was alive and thriving. With our momentum building, it was time to scale. I brought on Rachel Donovan as Director of Operations and James Wilson as Lead Security Engineer. Our team of 4 quickly outgrew my cramped apartment, so we leased a small but gritty office in a converted warehouse on the outskirts of Seattle. We didn't have fancy espresso machines or ergonomic chairs. What we had was vision and drive. Linda introduced us to Vertex Ventures, and after 2 intense meetings, they agreed to lead a $2 million funding round, just 1 year after I left Prism. Secure Sync was valued at $5 million. That night, fresh off signing the term sheet, my phone rang. It was my father. I saw the announcement. He said, $5 million valuation? Not bad. Katherine. His tone was laced with reluctant admiration, and despite everything, My heart leapt at that scrap of approval. Thanks, Dad. You know, he continued, with this kind of growth, you should think about bringing in more experienced management. I know a few execs who could guide a young company like yours. Just like that, the moment was gone. Even now, I wasn't enough. We're doing fine with our current team, I replied. But thanks for the offer. Don't get defensive. I'm just trying to help. Scaling requires experience. Experience like Jason's. I imagined he was thinking the guy who was on his 4th title at Wilmette Construction without ever leading a successful project. I hung up, returned to the office, and toasted with my team. Champagne in plastic cups, laughter echoing off exposed brick. They believed in me, in us. And that was the validation I'd been chasing for years. SecureSync's growth exploded. By month 18, we had 23 employees and had moved into a proper office space in downtown Seattle. Our clients now included 17 financial institutions and 3 healthcare providers. We weren't just playing in the big leagues, we were setting the pace. We built a culture rooted in merit. Titles didn't matter, only ideas did. Our Friday innovation sessions became legendary. Sticky notes on every surface. Engineers and ops staff bouncing concepts across the room like a mental volleyball game. Marcus, now fully in his CTO groove, was not just building tech, he was mentoring younger devs, turning ideas into architecture. Rachel created operational systems so efficient they made onboarding and scaling look effortless. And when we added Diana Fletcher as our CFO, her financial discipline helped steer us away from the chaos so many fast-growing startups drown in. We weren't a team anymore. We were a tribe. Industry recognition came when SecureSync won Most Innovative Security Solution at the annual Tech SC conference. Standing on that stage, accepting the award, I spotted faces from the early rejections executives who once dismissed my prototype, now furiously taking notes. The award opened new doors, bigger clients, bigger investors. Blackstone Ventures led our Series B round, injecting $15 million and valuing us at $25 million. We doubled our engineering team and expanded into AI-driven threat detection, entering a space even the giants hadn't cracked. The day after that funding announcement, my father called again. $25 million, he said. Now that's real business. Congratulations. I wanted to ignore how much his words still affected me, but old wounds don't heal overnight. Thanks, Dad. We're growing fast. I've been telling people you're the founder, he added. The Reynolds entrepreneurial spirit runs strong. It should have meant something, but it felt like too little, too late. Still, when he asked to tour our office, I agreed. He showed up with curiosity I hadn't expected, asked sharp questions, took notes. Then, as we wrapped up the tour, he sat down in my office and got to the real reason for his visit. Jason's been let go from Wilmette, he said. I'm sorry to hear that. I replied, surprised. What happened? Politics, he said, waving a hand. The CEO's nephew wanted his division. You know how it goes. I didn't. But I knew politics was rarely the whole story. He's exploring options. The market's tight. I was thinking, maybe you could find a role for him here. Business development, perhaps. Of course. There it was. Dad, we hire based on skills and experience, I said carefully. What does Jason know about cybersecurity? He understands business relationships, something you techies sometimes overlook. Besides, he's family. I swallowed the irony. I'll meet with him, I said. But no promises. He'll have to interview like everyone else. Jason showed up in an overpriced suit, full of buzzwords and bravado. I can really help elevate SecureSync's brand, he said. Create synergistic partnerships in adjacent verticals. Translation: no real plan. Just corporate fluff. But against my better judgment and the concern of my executive team, I created a role, Director of Strategic Partnerships, 6-month probation, measurable KPIs, equal expectations. At first, he seemed to be trying. Clients liked his charm, but that surface polish faded fast. He missed deadlines, skipped internal syncs, took long lunches that resulted in zero contracts. Worse, at family dinners, he bragged about landing deals he had nothing to do with. Meridian Bank was all me, he said one night. My connections from Wilmette opened the door. The truth. Our engineers had been working on that deal for 6 months before Jason even joined. When I confronted him, he seemed baffled. I'm just promoting the company, he said. Isn't that my job? Promoting with accuracy is your job, I snapped. Our team deserves the credit they earned. As Secure Sync's valuation neared $50 million, my father's involvement deepened. Weekly check-ins, unsolicited advice, mentions of board lunches I hadn't been told about. Jason, meanwhile, was promising capabilities we hadn't built yet. Rachel was documenting missed deadlines. Marcus flagged technical exaggerations to clients. He needs structure, I concluded during Jason's performance review, and clearer boundaries. Jason nodded, promised improvement, then immediately turned around and called our father. Catherine's micromanaging everything, I overheard him say. She doesn't get the business side. I should have acted then. But blood makes things messy, and I didn't want another family fracture. That hesitation would cost me everything. By our 3rd year, Secure Sync had hit a $50 million valuation. We had over 70 employees, a buzzing office in downtown Seattle, and were on the verge of something huge. We were working with investment bankers, preparing for an IPO within 18 months. Every meeting, every late-night brainstorm, every line of code, it was all pointing to this moment. And that's when my father invited me to a family dinner. It's time we properly celebrate your success, he said. His tone was overly warm, suspiciously so. But I was riding high on our momentum. I wanted to believe it was genuine, that maybe he was finally proud of me, unconditionally. The Cascade Grill was his favorite power venue. Dark wood panels, leather booths, where Seattle's old money made handshake deals over $60 steaks and 12-year scotch. When I arrived, my parents and Jason were already seated, all of them in formal attire. My father stood to greet me with rare affection. The woman of the hour, he said, even pulling out my chair. That should have been the first red flag. Over appetizers. He peppered me with thoughtful questions about our latest clients and the roadmap. He even jotted down notes on his phone. I wanted so badly to believe it was interest, not strategy. I let my guard down. Then came the toast. To Secure Sync, he said, raising his glass. To $50 million in valuation, a remarkable achievement. We clinked glasses. For a fleeting second, I felt it what I'd always wanted. Recognition. And then he continued. To the company's next chapter. Something about the way he said it snapped me alert. I've been thinking about the future, he said smoothly. What Secure Sync needs to hit $100 million, the IPO, beyond. Different skills become essential. We have a solid trajectory, I replied cautiously. Yes, he said. But leadership is everything. That's why I'm pleased to announce that Jason will be stepping in as CEO effective next month. I blinked. Excuse me. He didn't pause. You're brilliant with product and innovation, Katherine. No one disputes that. But Jason has the business acumen, the leadership presence. Jason picked up the script like he'd been rehearsing. I'm honored the board has such confidence in me. I want you to know, Katherine, your role as CTO will remain secure. Your technical contributions are valued. I stared at him. My role. Now, Katherine, Dad said in his most patronizing tone. We've discussed this with several board members. As majority shareholders, we feel this structure best serves the company's future. I kept my voice level. I'm the founder, the CEO. I built this company from my living room. Jason's been here less than a year. That's unnecessarily harsh. My mother chimed in, finally finding her voice. Jason has been networking with important industry figures. Networking isn't building. I cut in. When did these conversations happen? Over golf, over drinks. Dad shrugged. Investors understand succession. Companies of this size need experienced leadership. You mean male leadership, I said flatly. Don't make this about gender, he snapped. You made it about gender when you tried to install your underqualified son over the woman who built the damn company. Dad's voice turned cold. The decision is made. The vote is next week. I've secured the majority support. You can fight it and damage the company's valuation or accept your new role. I took a slow breath. And if I don't accept this generous demotion, his expression hardened. The board vote might not stop at CEO. Think carefully before forcing that confrontation. So there it was. The betrayal wasn't an accident. It was calculated. It had been in motion for months. I stood up. This dinner is over. Katherine, don't be dramatic, Mom pleaded. We're just trying to help the company. No, I said, shaking my head. You're just trying to give Jason something he hasn't earned again. But this time, you underestimated what you're taking. And who you're taking it from. My father's confidence wavered. Just for a moment. What does that mean? It means, congratulations are in order. I said, Jason, you might become CEO, but it won't be the company you think you're getting. I walked out into the Seattle night, cold and clear. My mind was already racing. They thought this was a power grab, a reshuffling. They had no idea what I was about to do. At home, I ignored the flood of texts and calls. I poured myself a glass of wine and made one phone call. Linda, it's Katherine. I need your advice. My father and brother just ambushed me. They're trying to push me out. She listened quietly, then said only two things. First, breathe. Second call. Sarah Parker. First thing in the morning. Sarah Parker was Secure Sync's attorney. She had helped draft all our IP licensing agreements. Do you think this is legal? I asked Linda. I think you need to know exactly where you stand before making a move. This isn't just family drama. It's a hostile takeover. Treat it like one. I barely slept. By dawn, I had a plan. Sarah met me at her office at 7 a.m. We pored over every document, founding agreements, bylaws, IP clauses, client contracts. There was good news. I owned 30% of the company. The board, thanks to my father's maneuvering, controlled 40%. But the gold was in the IP. Because I had insisted on a clause early on, any IP created by founding employees prior to outside funding remained personal property, with licensing rights granted to Secure Sync. Sarah pointed at it. You filed the patents personally. That gives you leverage. And the clients, I asked, many of them have service clauses specifically tied to your involvement. That would be very hard to transfer without your cooperation. For the next 3 weeks, I stayed quiet, professional. I attended executive meetings, nodded at transition plans, offered no resistance. Behind the scenes, I documented everything. My work, my relationships, my patents. I met privately with Marcus first. They can't do this, he said, furious. Legally, they can, I said. But the question is, what's left of the company afterward? He stared at me. What are you planning? I'm considering my options. I replied carefully. But I want you to hear it from me. He nodded. Whatever you decide, I'm in. I signed up for your vision, not theirs. Rachel and Diana gave the same response. I didn't ask for loyalty. They gave it anyway. 2 weeks before the board vote, I met with our 5 biggest clients under the guise of routine check-ins. In each conversation, I gently reminded them of the contractual language that required my oversight. Whatever changes happen internally, I said, I want you to know I remain committed to your success. The night before the board meeting, my father called. This silent treatment is childish, he said. The transition is happening. Fighting it only hurts the company. I'm not fighting, I said calmly. I'm preparing for the meeting. Like a professional. Good, he said. Jason's been working on his speech. Let's make this smooth for everyone. I ended the call, poured a second glass of wine, and reviewed my plan one last time. Tomorrow, I wasn't going in to fight. I was going in to win. I arrived at Secure Sync headquarters at 7:30 a.m., an hour and a half before the board meeting. The office was mostly empty, the halls still quiet. But in my private office, everything was already in motion. Marcus, Rachel, and Diana arrived minutes later, each carrying a folder, a flash drive, or that look in their eyes that said, "We're all in." "Everything's ready," Diana confirmed, laying down a folder. "Financial records? Clean and above reproach." Rachel gave a small nod. "Internal communications are scheduled and will go out across all teams at your signal." Marcus placed a flash drive on my desk. "This contains every line of our proprietary code, with detailed attribution on what was personally developed, what's company-owned, and what's licensed." I looked at the three of them, the leaders who had helped me build this from the ground up. "You're sure?" I asked. "Once we do this, there's no going back." Marcus didn't blink. "There's no secure sync without your vision. If you're leaving, we're not staying behind." By 8:45, board members started to arrive. Jason walked in beside our father, both in matching navy suits. Jason wore that smug, polished expression that always made me want to punch a wall. At exactly 9 Hoserwasers, we all sat around the long mahogany table in the boardroom. The Secure Sync logo was etched in the center of the table, just beneath the carafe of water I didn't touch. Walter Pennington, the board chairman, opened the meeting. "We have one agenda item today, the proposed leadership transition. William Reynolds has put forward a motion to appoint Jason Reynolds as CEO, with Katherine Reynolds transitioning to CTO. Do I have a second?" Edwin Marsh, a longtime friend of my father's, raised his hand. "Seconded." Before the vote could proceed, I stood. "I'd like to address the board first." Walter hesitated, then nodded. "You have the floor, Katherine." I walked around the table, distributing folders to each board member. "What you're holding is a comprehensive overview of Secure Sync's current structure and what's at stake with this proposed leadership change." I began my presentation. "Our competitive advantage is built on 3 pillars: proprietary technology, personal client relationships, and executive expertise." I turned to the first page. "Let's talk about technology. These 7 patents," I tapped the list, including our adaptive encryption system and cross-platform sync protocols, "were filed by me personally before the company took outside investment, according to our original operating agreement. These are licensed to Secure Sync only as long as I am actively involved in the company's operations." My father shifted uncomfortably. Jason frowned. A few board members leaned in. "This is a technicality," my father said, his voice tight. "It can be worked around." "No, it can't," I replied, motioning to Sarah Parker, who had quietly entered and now stood at the back of the room. "Sarah, as company counsel, can you confirm?" Sarah stepped forward. "The licensing agreements are legally binding and non-transferable. Without Katherine's direct involvement, the license expires." I moved on. Next, clients. Our top 5 clients, who account for 60% of current revenue, all have service-level agreements that specifically tie their contracts to me as the service provider. Jason waved a hand. "Clients work with companies, not individuals. Everyone knows that." "Not in cybersecurity," I said calmly. "Not when implementation is this technical and trust-dependent." Flip to page 12, you'll see contract excerpts. They don't just want Secure Sync, they want my oversight. Board members flipped through the pages. I let the silence sit. And finally, leadership. "Marcus, Rachel, Diana, would you join us?" "Please." The 3 of them entered the room, standing behind me. In the event this board proceeds with its plan, these three executives who collectively lead engineering, operations, and finance have informed me they will resign immediately as per their change of control clauses. The room froze. I let it hang. So to summarize, if this vote goes through, Secure Sync will lose its core intellectual property, its largest clients, and its executive team. What remains will be a name, an office, and a vastly diminished valuation. Walter removed his glasses, rubbing his temples. This is a lot to process. My father looked furious. This is blackmail. No, I said simply. This is business. The way you taught me, based on leverage, assets, and risk. Edwin stammered. We could challenge the patent clauses. Sarah stepped in. You could, but the contracts are airtight. Litigation would be expensive and likely unsuccessful. And while that's dragging out in court, your revenue and reputation would collapse. Jason looked panicked. You said this was handled. He hissed to our father. You said this would be easy. Dad snapped. It should have been. Then I dropped the final bomb. I'm resigning, I said, placing a sealed envelope on the table. Effective immediately. I will no longer be an employee of Secure Sync. Gasps. Silence. My father looked stunned. The only question is whether Secure Sync wishes to retain licensing rights and some client goodwill through a negotiated agreement with me and my new venture, or if you'd prefer to start over from scratch. Walter looked up. New venture. I nodded. Phoenix Innovation. Launching immediately. The meeting dissolved into chaos. Outside the boardroom, Rachel whispered. It went exactly as planned. No, I said. That was just phase 1. Now comes the fallout. Within hours, the company was buzzing. Employees received a carefully worded email explaining my resignation and the birth of Phoenix Innovation. Phones buzzed. Slacks lit up. My inbox exploded with messages from staff asking if there was room at the new company. By that evening, our backup office space I had quietly leased weeks earlier was live. Equipment was delivered. Phones installed. Within 48 hours, 17 Secure Sync employees had resigned. Within a week, 3 of our 5 biggest clients had terminated their contracts and begun negotiating with Phoenix. Industry blogs ran headlines. Secure Sync CEO ousted, in power struggle founder, launches rival startup. Valuation analysts downgraded Secure Sync from $50 million to under $10 million in 10 days. Jason tried to do damage control, press releases, interviews, but he didn't have the knowledge, the credibility, or the respect. My father tried to call. I ignored him. Then came the legal threat. They're going to sue, he said in a voicemail, for damages, for breach of fiduciary duty. We were ready. Sarah had documented everything. The patents, the contracts, the exits, all clean, all defensible. 3 months later, Secure Sync quietly dropped the case. 6 months after that, Phoenix Innovation had grown to 42 employees. 30 were former Secure Sync staff. Our new office glowed with energy, passion, loyalty. We had 4 of Secure Sync's top 5 clients, and a brand new name that meant something. Phoenix. Because we rose from fire, and we were stronger for it. 18 months in, we closed a $20 million funding round. Valuation, $100 million. We were officially worth double what Secure Sync had ever been. One day, my mother showed up at the Phoenix office. She walked through our space, silent and observant. It's impressive, she finally said. Thank you, I replied. She hesitated at the door. Your father. He knows he made a mistake. He just can't say it. I don't need him to, I said quietly. I've made peace. I should have said something, she said. I saw it all, but I stayed silent. That was the closest I would ever get to an apology, and somehow it was enough. 2 years later, Phoenix Innovation reached unicorn status, a billion-dollar valuation. We rang the bell at our IPO, surrounded by our team, our investors, and our community. That day, I stood on the NASDAQ floor and remembered that dinner at the Cascade Grill, the toast, the betrayal, and I smiled because I had won, not out of spite, but out of power, clarity, and vision. My father tried to take everything I built. Instead, he gave me the one thing I hadn't yet realized: I needed permission to stop seeking his approval and start building something even greater. So if you've ever been betrayed, underestimated, or pushed aside, take it from me. Sometimes, the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings. Drop a comment below if you've been through something similar. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to be reminded that resilience isn't a trait, it's a choice. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next story.